This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. You're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. So we had a review of the Senior Football Championship semi-finals earlier in the week, and on that show we just didn't get to look into the Intermediate Championship and bring listeners up to date what's happening in the Junior Championship too. So felt like tonight was a good time to do that, and I'm joined by Barry Downey to look back on the action in the Intermediate Championship semi-finals. Barry, these two intermediate games, they had everything. I was thinking at half time in the Curfin B game in Caltra that Curfin B were going to have too much here. I was thinking at half time in Brendan's and Spiddal that Brendan should hang on here, and on Spiddal and Caltra just absolutely tore up the script in that second half.
Yeah, it was amazing how both games were very similar in that sense. And again, we talk about throughout the year with these new rules how momentum is a big thing in these games. And like a little bit like the second semi-final in the senior game, there's no lead that's insurmountable now. And I think not only do the team who are ahead, but obviously the team who are behind now believe in that too. So there's great excitement amongst the games with partially with the new rules and as I said, that momentum swing, but great entertainment in both games.
It's fantastic in one way for Caltra and Spiddal to come through games like that, isn't it, really, before a final?
Yeah, no, very much so. And if you go back even to, I remember I was at Caltra's first game against Clonberne, Paul, and that was a bit of a swing. And, they were well ahead. Clonberne came back. Caltra showed the experience and were leading going into normal time. And I think it was only a defeat they had this year. Clonberne obviously pipped them. Similar, Salt Hill have been in similar dogfights this year as well. I know their first game against Kilconnolly was a big win for them. So, and look, you've got to, particularly in Caltra's case, you've got to really admire them because, I've been on record saying it before. I think this intermediate championship is tougher to win than the senior because you've got so many teams at a similar level. So for Caltra to come back after last year with that kind of target on their back and, with the disappointment of last year, it's great credit to the players and to the management team to have them back in that place again, which is really good. And arguably the two best teams are in the final now.
If we look at Caltra and Curfin B first, Caltra 117, Curfin B 210. You'd have to give Caltra massive credit when you consider, obviously, Ryan Henley Ryan has been a key performer for them in their full back line over the last few years. The news then that Sean Kane, what a player he's been for Caltra, and we even seen it after his performances last year. He got called up into Port Joyce's squad for some of the year this year with the Galway senior footballers. They were two big losses, and it probably had people slightly fancying Curfin B, but they showed a level of maturity in that second half.
No, they did, and that's where, as I said earlier, the experience that they have as a group. They've been in, like, even those games last year against Michaels in the final, both games, they were behind, I think, by 5 or 6 points on a couple of occasions. And, they find a way back for Caltra as well. But you're right, there's 3 or 4 players there. Obviously, Alan Naughton is the big standout. He got 110 the last day. I really like Oran Lockery in goal. I think he was in with Porrick's extended training panel last year as well. So, a lot of these guys are really good and talented footballers. As I said, the likes of Alan Naughton gets the credit from a Caltra point of view. Again, you've got Keelan Murray, Ross Hannon, again, great contributors. And again, on the back of last year's performance, is only getting better.
On Alan Naughton, obviously he's been one of the standout performers when it comes to Intermediate Football Championship. But Caltra finished up with a total of 117. He kicks 111 himself. Even when they're in that first half, when Curfin B were ahead 2-6 to 1-4, he really kept them in the game, but then crucially, really was really influential when I suppose Caltra did take control in that game.
Yeah, and look, even though they were behind, I think the goal in the first half that he got kind of kept them, at least in with a shout coming up to half time, and that was a big score, as equally as important, maybe as you say, toward the scores towards the end. But you know, as I said, he takes the plaudits, and yes, particularly the last day he scored great. But Keelan Murray as well for me is another big danger man, and we'll talk about how the please God the final will play out, but I just think like the whole full forward line that Caltra have is all of them are worth scores, and obviously Alan gets on the end of most of them, but I think he's a great man for creating as well. So I don't think it's a case of marking one man and then you should be okay. They've got three or four really good threats, and I think it was Keelan Murray that kind of kept them in a couple of those games last year in that intermediate uh, final with Michaels the first day, and obviously the replay.
Yeah, even 2-8 to 1-5 curve and be your head and you're thinking they're really going to drive on here. But in fairness, after that period of leading 2-8 to 1-5, Curvin can only manage 2 points um, after that period and Caltra go on to kick 12.
Yeah, and just after Killian Joyce had scored, Paul, I think the next 20 minutes was 9-0 in favour of Caltra. And that's what I say about this, momentum. And, I was even watching the Donegal final there the other day, went to extra time. Um, no lead is insurmountable now. And if you can get a run on a team, particularly in that third quarter, it's really, really, yours to lose at that stage, I suppose. So, that's what, as I said, the new rules have really brought for me is the ability to get 2 pointers, or you're never really out of the game. And surprising Corofin, even though obviously it was their intermediate team, you'd think they'd be more than well versed to be able to protect that and manage a game out from that. But I suppose I said that's where the Caltra experience comes in. As I said earlier, I think they are one of, along with Spiddal, the two best teams that are in it.
It was only making me think after watching Curfin and Salt and Cara, and it might be disappointing for Curfin supporters coming away from that, but Finn McIntyre throughout this championship has just lit it up with scores. 1-2 the last day for him, and even Killian Joyce 3 points. He's not long out of being a Galway minor as well. Like they're definitely two players, even Aaron Looney as well. Like there's I think we can all be assured there's plenty of these intermediate players who will go on to play at senior level when they get their chance.
Yeah, you have it. I'd written down Killian Joyce here to get special mention because he's one that really stood out for me. I seen them earlier on as well. Who I can't remember who they were playing. But yeah, he was one guy that was consistently good. And as you say, Finn McIntyre is not afraid to put up the flags either. But no, he's solid, and he's great work ethic as well. And as I said, he got, I think, some really important scores on the weekend, and like that just after half time, and he popped another one. That's the time when you think, okay, if they can add another one or two now, they should be all right. But that's, as I said before Calcio went on their scoring spree of 9 scores to 0 in that 20 minutes. But yeah, there's a conveyor belt there, and that's what keeps, I suppose, Corofin competitive at senior level when these guys keep coming through, and they get a nice way to cut their teeth to playing a good standard of intermediate football.
Yeah, sorry, I said earlier on Alan Naughton 111. It was 110 he got. Keelan Murray got 4 points. So it was 114 both of them kicked out of catchers. 117. Darren McCabe as well got a 2 pointer during that stage, and Mikey Mulryan then chipping in with the other point. Just on that spread of scores for Caltra, obviously only four players registering scores. Is that just the way maybe the games are this time of year, or will that be something maybe Caltra will want to see in a final to see a greater spread of scores?
Yeah, look, I'm a believer like that too. That I genuinely think they have a nice spread of lads that it doesn't matter who gets on the end of it to score. As I said, different days, different lads will put their hands up. Yes, it's nice, and look, we all look for the ideal to have 8 or 9 different scores and spread it across. But they're putting up big scores in every game. I think it was, I can't remember, was it the last game they missed 2 penalties and they still put up a huge score. So yeah, that wouldn't concern me. It's nice to see these guys in form, and as I said, they have a front three that's as good as any team at the moment. There's a cat here somewhere. Sorry about that. Um, they have a front three there that is as good as any, and look, that's what forwards are meant to be doing. So that's, as Roy Keane would say, that's their job.
In fairness, you'd have to give big credit to Gabriel Naughton and Niall Coyne there in the backroom team because there was nearly a target, nearly a challenge on Caltra's back from the outset, and even the first day against Kilkerran as we mentioned, it was a setback. But the way they've regrouped since, they've come through a battle with Illanar and Kerfin, and now into the final. But getting back to this intermediate championship final for the second year in a row. Big credit there because, as we've mentioned, it's not easy to get back here, and we've seen teams have struggled to get back to finals in previous years.
Yeah, no, look, as I said earlier, I think it's a really good, really credit, as you said, to the management team and the players, but particularly the management team. And there's some great people involved there. You mentioned Gabriel and Niall, but, you know, um, uh, uh, Shane Mockler is involved, Mike Finnerty, Brian Kilroy, particularly Brian and Mike. These guys have been Caltra for the last 20, 30 years. And like it means so much. I mean, even after the final and the disappointment of last year, I remember meeting some of them after the game, and the first thing they said was they were gutted for the lads, and they were genuinely obviously disappointed, but it was more for the players than themselves. And as I said, there's no better group of 4 or 5 lads as the lads we've just mentioned to get lads on the right track and get them to believe they can go back again. And said back to back finals for intermediate football is really, really good because, as I said, I think that competition is a tougher one to win than the senior because we look, with all sorry with all due respect, we have we probably only have 4, maybe 5 teams competing at senior level to get into that top 4. With the intermediate, look, you could at least easy, look at maybe 6, 7, 8 teams that will all believe they could win it. So yeah, it's a great testament to the group. But like that, it'll count for nothing unless they go one step further and they're up against a really strong challenge now in Spiddal, and they'll know that too.
You'd sort of have to have a bit of devastation for St. Brendan's. Paddy Downey gets the game back level in the other semi-final to make it 1-11 apiece. This new rule of not handing the ball back, they get penalised. Then Manus gets this free outside the edge of the D for a two-pointer. He hits it over, and it's the final play of the game. It's just, I suppose, how cruel sport can be sometimes.
Oh yeah, and look, for me, they were the most improved and a club that have been on a great trajectory over the last couple of years. I've even seen it at underage level. You know, certainly with development squads, there's so many lads from Brendan's coming through. It's a credit to the club, and I know it doesn't mean a whole lot, but it would have been great to see them get through to a final. And as I said, we're probably looking at the 2 best teams, but yeah, Paddy Downey's no relation, but Paddy Downey's contribution this year has been brilliant. And again, there's, I think, Rory Cunningham uh, got the goal, did he? I think he
Yeah,
did.
yeah, he
Yeah,
did.
so yeah, he was really impressive. But going back to Manus' kick, yeah, he downplayed it afterwards, saying that it was a kick to nothing because it was a draw game anyway. So he had the luxury of going to extra time if he missed. But yeah, it was super kick, really, really super kick. And again, once he stepped up, I think even the Brendan's lads knew it was only going one way.
In fairness, you have to give massive credit to Manus too for what he continues to keep doing for on Spiddale. He kicked an outrageous two-pointer in that second half as well. He even tries to, I suppose, gives Spiddal so much oxygen in attack. Even they were running a few times. Brendan's kind of, I suppose, copped on to eventually how much of a threat he is in attack. But even last year, what he did with Caro and to still have the hunger of wanting to, I suppose, get back to senior football with his club.
Oh, an immensely proud Spiddle man. But I saw him firsthand, Paul, a couple of years ago. I was involved with James's, and we played them in the championship. I think it was the third or fourth game. And it's not only, as you said, his ability to kick some great scores and generate great play, but his vocal on the field, with lads around him, and his presence there is something that's really brilliant. I know we want that from goalkeepers, but he's non-stop supporting, encouraging. He's directing. His on-field management is really, really good. And again, as a player, that must be brilliant to be able to have behind you in any situation. But yeah, delighted for him, and yeah, it'll be there'll be no shortage of passion between Caltra and Spiddle in the final now.
Yeah, similar to Curvin B, it was honestly hard to see Spiddal turn that around in the second half because they really struggled to get scores from play in the first half. Brendan's really seemed to dictate the play and mind the ball. And maybe if they look back, there probably is regrets that they didn't put on Spiddale away. And then I suppose that little coming together at halftime, maybe it seemed to spark something um, in Spiddle. But Brendan's definitely seemed like the team who were in complete control in the first half.
Yeah, I got a sense from interviews afterwards that there was like I think not a row, but there was a sense of disappointment from the Spiddle lads, and I think they kind of collectively stood up at halftime in the dressing room and took responsibility, and not taken away from Brendan's display, but we probably didn't see the real Spiddle in that half anyway. That said, it was still all to play for, as you said, with the last kick of the game. But I think, after the first 10 minutes of the second half, they got it back to 1-8 each. And, you got Anton O'Lee, you got Liam O'Kellig, you got some really, again, experienced players in that position. And I suppose that's what, along with Manus, that's what I suppose made the difference going into that last bit. But look, you know, it's tight margins. We're saying that now it was the experience that got them over the line. And but look, last kick of the game, and you can't. There's no time to do anything, to counteract it. It's a real sickener, unfortunately, for Brandon's. But as I said, they're going the right trajectory. I think they were underestimated by a couple of teams early on, but they'll be a force to be reckoned with now next year. If we can already talk about next year.
Yeah, it does definitely feel like Brennan's are going to push on, and for me, it'd be no surprise to see them at senior at some stage over the next 2 or 3 years because I think they're probably that close. And this is the first time in a while they went to the semi-final stage, so they'll obviously take big confidence from that. But in fairness to Spiddle, there's no point in saying otherwise. When Liam O'Keneela was introduced in 44 minutes, players really struggled with injury
Yeah,
this year, but he was a huge turning point. Even you could see him when he came into this one, and the way he got the point straight away when he came in.
I was going to say his first action really was to get that score, and when not only the players on the field, but when the crowd see him coming in, as supporters see him coming in, a lad with his experience as well, and obviously an opposition as well, a tiring opposition. That's the last thing you want to see, and it was perfectly timed, master stroke by management. But yeah, no, look, as I said, if they've all them lads fit now, and I think it's only what 2-3 years since they went down, 2 years maybe,
Yeah,
which again, a little bit like Caltra, is a super achievement to get back to a final and have that drive and hunger, because so many teams that return that quickly. And again, maybe Michaels did it last year after going down the year before, but I thought that might have been, and it proved the case, it might have been a bit too soon to come back. I know you want to get back as soon as you can, but it's nice to have a year or two of getting that kind of toughness and being ready for senior football.
Just with that, obviously, character again from Spiddal, it'll obviously have to delight them, but they probably know even from the first half that there's probably improvements to go. But I do think as well for on Spiddal to have Donald Varda now back involved and involved in the backroom team with them and him being a Spiddal man as well is it's a big positive for the club to have someone like that involved.
No, absolutely, and equally, as I said, with Gabriel and the lads involved with Caltra, and that's the way it should be, because as I said, nobody can match that passion, and Donald's got great experience as well. There's respect both for him, and he has great respect for the players as well, which is very evident. And particularly when a team goes on to, please God, win an intermediate championship now, that's where, as you said, the pride of parish and the pride um, of football. And it's great for Galway football too. Should Spiddal go on and, please God, go back senior, I think it's important for Galway football to have a strong representation out west anyway.
Just on it, even looking briefly at this final, we won't go too in depth into it now. We'll have previews and build up and all that next week. But it already feels like you're looking at Caltra, you're looking at Alan Naughton, Mikey Mulrine, and these players. You're looking at the two O'Lees, you're looking at O'Keneela, Liam O'Kelly, Pork, Ona Curran, Darren McCabe. The battles here down the spine of both teams already feels like it's what's going to decide the final.
Yeah, and I know you don't want to go too far ahead, but at the same time, that's what this week is about. Next week, the amount of studying of videos that must be going on this week now in preparation for the build up to next week. Uh, there's so many different fires you have to try and put out on both teams, or nullify or hammers. Like, it'd be like hitting the moles in the fairgrounds, because there's so many different options on each team and so many talented footballers in each team. So we mentioned, obviously, and he gets a lot of the credit, is Alan Naughton, and obviously Anton gets a lot of credit from a Spiddale point of view. But as I said, there's 8 or 9 players there that can change or dictate a game, and that's the beauty of this final, which will be nice to see the matchups and how each team counteracts the strengths of the opposition. So yeah, there'll be a lot of nights in out west and in Caltra now this week or next week, looking at videos, I'm sure.
Just a word as well, Barry. Clifton defeating Gabriel's 2-12-13 in the intermediate relegation final. That relegates Gabriel's and keeps Clifton safe.
Yeah, I didn't see that game, but like that too, I think Clifton's experience again was probably enough, judging by it. Um, it's very hard on Gabriel's again. I think it's important. They've been making reasonable strides as well. But look, I think when it comes to a relegation, and this is not being harsh, but I think any team that goes down has kind of had enough chances before it gets to that stage. So look, it might be no harm, go down, and again, if they can take a lot of positives from this year, and be the strongest team in June or next year, and then, please God, they get a chance to come up. But Clifton, again, they had the bit of experience from last year. I think that was enough to get them over that one.
Just a word as well. The 19s finals they took place last night. Ormore Mary won the intermediate, or sorry, won the under 19s title again. They're actually playing Clare Galway again in the minor final on Sunday in Tuam Stadium. But for some of these Ormore Mary players, I think it's even extra special this year because for some of these players, they got their hands on a under 19 hurling and football medal.
Yeah, it's frightening. And again, they not say comfortably, but they were very impressive in the final last night. A lot more impressive than I was expecting. That to be a lot tighter of a game. But yeah, no, it's scary stuff, and a great achievement, and particularly when you, as you say, when you look at it from a dual point of view, and people are saying, the days of dual players are gone. That's a huge achievement, because Again, a lot of these lads won a minor as well. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of medals amongst that group, and it will be interesting to see. It's nothing's guaranteed, but it will be interesting to see if that can be transferred now to senior level, or when that might happen. So we'll see how that goes.
yeah, it'd be interesting, particularly Harry Keady, Niall Pearce, Shea Rabbit, all these under 19 players, and it's probably great for Kevin Johnson getting to look at some of these games in the under 19 championship overall because it's been a very decent championship there. Just for people who aren't aware, a couple of the fixtures over the weekend, it's a lot of minor finals on this weekend, but Claregoa and Ormore Mary play in the minor A final 2 o'clock in Tuam Stadium on Sunday. Carstran and Annadown, they play in Carstran at 1 o'clock in the minor Shield Championship final. Under 17C Shield Championship final then. It's Letchermore versus Loughrea at 1 o'clock in Letchermore. In the minor B final, Berna play Hepford in Tuam Stadium at 12 o'clock there. And there is another minor final as well on Saturday. That's between Milltown and Killannon, and that's at 2 o'clock in Tuam Stadium as well. So there's a good few minor finals up for grabs there. In the junior championship, then at the weekend, Williamstown 211, Hepford 17 points. Williamstown win 4-2 on penalties. The other game, Castle bet Father Griffin 0, 215 to 214. I think it was a 2-pointer laid on from Castle to win this one, but um, hard for Hepford and Father Griffin 0's players to even look back on those
Oh my
finals.
God. I was listening to the Williamstown game in the car, and I actually got home just as Gary, what's his name,
Gary
Gary.
Kelly. Gary Kelly.
Gary Kelly, thank you. Fine footballer. But yeah, just as Gary Kelly was taking the kick to what could have won the game, and it dropped short in the game. So I was sat in the car for the next 25 minutes outside, just listening to the extra time and then the penalties because I couldn't leave it. And credit goes to the lads in Galway Bay for their coverage on it. But yeah, look, it's really tight games, both of them, and great excitement, which is what everybody wants.
Yeah, it is. It is nearly delight for Williamstown now and Castle to be in that final. They play now in a junior county final, and it's going to be the curtain raiser to the senior football championship final next weekend. So at 5:30, Williamstown and Castle play in Pearse Stadium on Saturday, and that's followed then by Mike Cullen and Saltinock Cara in the senior final at 7:30. But isn't it fantastic for Williamstown and Castle players to play as a curtain raiser now to the senior final?
Ah, brilliant! Really, really brilliant, and only right as well because they deserve their day on the big stage, and supporters alike. And again, it was a huge. I wasn't that as I mentioned, but I think there was a huge crowd down at the Headford game last weekend, and yeah, it's brilliant. And again, looking at the atmosphere in there last Saturday evening for the two senior semi-finals, Paul. I probably wasn't a great advocate of bringing them into Pearse Stadium on a Saturday evening, but it was magical. It was great for kids. It was a lovely evening, a huge crowd, and just a nice buzz around the place as well. So credit to Paul Bellew and his team for making that decision because it's so far anyway it proved a big success and it promises to be nice now again. Please God on Sunday week or Saturday week.
For Williamstown and Castle, the winner of that championship will go on to represent Galway at Connacht Championship level. But there's another final to come if they get over this as well. So Annadown and Clare Galway play in the Junior 2 final. And I must say, from an Annadown perspective, it's been fantastic to run. Our junior team, second team, has went on this year. They bet Mike Cullen after extra time in the quarter final. A goal then from Owen Curry in the 59th minute last weekend. Won the game for them, 110 to 12 points. And for Clare Galway, it took them extra time to beat Tuam Stairs then in the other game. So it's crazy in one sense to think, but the winner of Annadown and Claregoy, they play in the Junior 2 final Sunday week at 12 o'clock. But The winner of Annadown and Claregalway plays the winner of Williamstown and Castle in a junior playoff final then, and the winner of that goes to intermediate. But I know some people might give out about second teams sometimes, but I think from an Annadown and Claregalway perspective, it's fantastic for both of those clubs to have a second team be near intermediate.
Yeah, no, definitely. Look, and we spoke earlier about the benefits Corofin get from obviously their intermediates this year having a good run, and the players that are coming through there. More so, it's again with the pick of certainly from an Anna Down point of view, that's a great achievement. And again, it bodes really well for next year as well. I know there's a lot of young lads on that team as well, and yes, they're going through a bit of a transition at the minute, and that was where their staying up senior football was huge, and that should be seen as a really good year, given the challenges that they had, and it's as I said that importance will be seen next year. Please God, when that momentum from this year with the second team, all these players I'm sure train together,
Yeah.
and again they push each other. Yeah, absolutely, and it's brilliant, and again great for the parish, and I'm sure they'll be very well supported. So yeah, I think it's a huge credit to the club, and should be acknowledged.
Yeah, that game a doubleheader with Caltra and Spiddal in Tube Stadium the next Sunday then at 2 o'clock. But that's all we do time for on today's show. Thanks a million to Barry for coming on.
Thank you. Good evening.